Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, Matt here with Duke's Models, and welcome to the second installment of the 3D printed TIE Interceptor build. So in the first episode, the entire focus was on getting things cleaned up and primed, and pretty much to a point where we can start painting. In the second episode, it's going to be all about that paint. And we're going to start with the solar panels on the wings. So first of all, let's go ahead and clear the cockpit ball out of harm's way. And next, before I start spraying anything of color, I'm going to put down a coat of MRP clear gloss on the panels themselves. This is because they're going to be getting a metallic black treatment, and I want to give them a shinier base to play on than what we got with the Moto and Mr. Surfacer. Alright, so for the solar panel color, I was originally playing around with some MRP graphite and some MRP gunmetal, and I was happy-ish with the graphite. But then I looked around in my guns drawer, and I found that I actually do have some C78 metallic black. And I sprayed some of that onto my little mule here, and I was really happy with how it came out. So we're going to be going with that. So I thinned down the C78 with some Gaia Notes Metallic Master Thinner. Don't know if it makes a difference, but it seems to, so yay. Now let's go ahead and put this stuff down. Definitely imparts a nice sheen to things. Interesting color. Okay, so the metallic black has been applied. Now it's a matter of letting it set up for a little bit before I mask it, and then we can start playing with the gray. So at first, it doesn't seem like masking off the solar panels of a TIE Interceptor is really all that bad. After all, they're all straight lines, they're relatively big, nothing super complicated, no weird compound curves to deal with, just all straight angles. The thing is, though, some of those angles are really tight, and getting those angles nailed is a pain in the ass. So instead of scanning and drawing shit out in Illustrator and dragging out the silhouette just to cut some mast, I decided to do math. Basically calculated the angles I needed, worked all that out, calculated how many of them I needed, and then just sliced a bunch of tape up with a legitimate protractor. And after a whole night's of bench work, I have the solar panels all masked off. Now, for the most part, masking these is pretty easy. It's just very tedious and time consuming. A lot of these angles are pretty easy to hit with, just pieces of tape kind of cut in random shapes and whatnot. The real bitch ones are these ones at the very front, the 19.8 whatever degree angles. Whew, they were not fun to hit. The other things that were a pain were, the ones up here, not great either, like 67 degrees, I think. And then these little 42 degree numbers back here. So, yeah, there were some expletives thrown around. There was a lot of time wasted, but they're now masked. But before I start painting everything else around it, we need to deal with the cockpit. Because right now it is just exciting Stynylrez gray. Neat, huh? So we've got that. We've got the blast shield. We've got the seat. And we've got the frame. Now, my plan for the cockpit itself is to go pretty light-handed and essentially do a bit of an aquagloss wash in here to pick out some details. I might do a bit of brushwork, like for the cabling that you can see down here on the ground, which you won't be able to see once everything is installed. I might also go ahead and detail some of these panels. I know that sometimes they're represented as like computer displays. I don't know why the fuck you would have a computer display back here behind you, but whatever. So, yeah, that is pretty much that. I am still kind of frustrated that I had to build this with the top hatch closed because it would have been fun to get in there and do some object source lighting in here, but I think I will figure out a way to survive. So first of all, before I do any sort of washing or any of that kind of stuff, I'm going to go ahead and spray this outer rim here, because one thing you'll see when you put the frame in, well, let's do this guy first. So once this is in here, and this is in here, if you look on the side, you've got this big old ring, right? So I'm going to go ahead and deal with that ring before I deal with anything else. And that ring is going to be Gunship Gray. Because it's a nice dark tone, I feel like it makes a good representation for what you see the frame painted and these little latches on the side here painted, and it contrasts nicely with the gray that I'm thinking about using here, the US medium gray, or potentially even the medium gray and PRU blue that I've got going on back here. So, we shall see. But regardless, it'll make a good color for that ring and provide it a little bit of darkness above and beyond. Now I'm going to want to beat up the outside of this frame a bit. But while we've got the paint out, let's go ahead and paint the inside. Okay, next up for the blast shield combing, whatever the hell this thing is, I've decided to go ahead and use a mix of AMT-12 dark gray. It's one of my favorite dark grays, and MRP steel. Give it a little bit of a metallic sheen. So these are already mixed up. Just dump them in the airbrush. I don't really need precision for this, and I also don't want to clog up one of my 770 or 771 with metallic shit, so the 267 is getting a nod this time. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. Now this is of course going to get washes and a little bit more detailing. Some of the side details here will probably be picked out, for example, but for now I think that looks pretty solid. Now for the seat, I'm just going to kind of wing it and go with some MRP 141, which is the World War II era neutral gray. It's a bit darker than the current neutral gray, and I don't expect it'll really make much of a difference in this cockpit, but what the hell. Okay, next I need to go ahead and paint the cabling that runs down here at the edges of the floor. Will it be seen? I have no idea, but it might. Alright, that's terrible, but again, with weathering, with stuff in the way, with a layer of transparency between all this stuff, who is really going to care? Okay, next up I've got a mix of Vallejo black and ammo steel, and I'm going to use this to pick out a few little details on this because I have an idea. Okay. Alright, let's let all that dry, and then it'll be time for an aqua gloss wash. Alright, so we've put down NATO brown and international blue. Now it's time for our next tone, chocolate. Now this one's not going to be as all over the place. It's going to be a bit more targeted. Okay, so I think at this point I'm pretty happy with how the initial layers are going down, and I think it's time to move into some base coating. I was planning to do a few more layers, but at this point I'm thinking it might make more sense to go ahead and get the base coat down and then work on layers on top of the base coat and do a bit of sandwich shading that way. Plus that'll give me a sense of overall how it's looking and where I need to go harder and where I don't, which is always a bit of a danger with putting down tones before the base coat. So I've been kind of waffling and on the fence about what I want to do for the main color. The play I considered first was the US Navy medium gray, which is okay, but maybe a bit gray. I also considered PRU blue, which I think is too blue. And down here I've got a mix of PRU blue and medium blue. And so I think I'm going to go with that, but I'm going to mix it up just a tiny bit. And I'm going to go with a 2-to-1 ratio. So two parts of the US Navy medium gray / gray blue / whatever they call it, and 1 part PRU blue. And I'm going to be lazy on these because it's MRP and I can be. And just put these straight into the paint cup. To this wonderful concoction, I'm also going to add some Mr. Color leveling thinner, good old unicorn tears, just to give ourselves some thinner paint to work with. Even though MRP is pretty thin, I want to make sure that I can sneak up on this. And I'm hoping this will put us in that sort of late Empire, early Remnant days, kind of like what you see in Return of the Jedi and in Mandalorian when Mayfield is found in the junkyard dismantling ties. So got that kind of color going on. Maybe not quite as dark as the junkyard, but this thing is still flying, so. I need to reprint the stand too. It fucked up. It's basically good enough to hold it for this kind of work, but definitely had some issues with keeping the base level. Which really sucks because this thing is a pain in the butt to print. It takes up a lot of resin. It takes a long time. If I were doing this again, or if I do another one in a different scale, I might think about drilling a hole through one of these wings here and mounting it at like an aggressive turning angle, like it's, you know, curving around an asteroid or something. Just get something cool that way. Okay, so I've got the 2-to-1 medium gray and PRU blue coat down, and now I am looking at it and thinking I need to go a little bit lighter, because even though I think this looks pretty damn cool, I also have to recognize that weathering is going to bring it down and make it darker, and so I need something a bit lighter to hold its own in the face of what's to come. And I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to switch out the gray blue for a dark ghost gray, or maybe even a light ghost gray. Probably I'll stick with dark ghost gray though. And I'm also going to go, before I do that, and add in some lighter sections in here, you know, little bits and whatnot that I want to be lighter tones, so that when another blend coat comes in on top, it will carry through. Alright, so the next color coming to the party is going to be MRP 296 Light Gray. It's a light, cooler, violet tinted, maybe even gray. That's meant for the SU-30 and 35 and the Yak 130. Next up, we're going to take things a little bit warmer with some Grigio Azzurro. Good old Italian color. Stands for gray-blue, but it's definitely on the warmer side. Okay, so now that I've added multiple grays, the latest one is some dark ghost gray to kind of, you know, punch up the gray areas of the tie. I've gone ahead and cranked the Mac valve down on the PS 770 to do a bit of stippling work. Basically just to introduce some variation as we go. I'm hoping this will help sort of balance the light and the dark. It looks kind of gross as it goes down, but then once it dries, you get some really nice little effects out of it. Alright, next up, I promised myself I would do a darker gray in some places, so it's time to go ahead and make that happen. So for the darker gray accent, we're going to be using some MRP 375 BS 629 dark camo gray. And this one, we're going to first start off with doing the accents like we were doing with all the other gray tones. I might want to go darker than this too. Yeah, that's a bit lame. Alright, what do I want to do? Let's go with... Man, I thought that stuff was darker than it was. Weak. Okay, so I've switched out for some good old dark gunship gray. And just using this to give a few areas a different tone. So I was going to go with AMT-12 next, which is a nice dark warm gray. But I've had a change of mind, and I think I'm going to give this dark gray 36076 a shot. This is the dark gray that if you've seen the FA-18B Aggressor model that's painted kind of like an SU-35 or an SU-34, this is the dark gray that they use for that has a slight purple-blue type tone to it. So maybe add some interesting elements to the TIE Fighter, TIE Interceptor. Jesus Christ. These wings. Fuck, man. Alright. So these need a very light touch. I have thinned this stuff down heavily with Mr. Rapid Thinner. So hopefully I can paint small without too many problems popping up. It will probably be completely blown out when we come back to do blend coat. Okay, so for the blend coat, I revised it slightly. I'm still going with 2 parts US Navy gray blue and 1 part PRU blue, but I'm also adding 1 part light ghost gray. And so I've got basically a lighter mix of what I had down before, and this we're going to now get onto the tie itself. All of these different grays should start blending in, creating a nice uniform but still varied surface. At least that's my hope. Okay, so as I was painting, I noticed a little bit of flurm or something in the surface of the tie right up here above this diamond thing. It almost looks like a piece of lint kind of buried in there, but I think it might actually be like something to do with the print itself. Now, there are certainly other defects in the print that I just am not going to deal with, like, where is it? Kind of over here you can see a slightly depressed area, kind of like a little band running around the whole thing, and that sucks, but I'm not going to go through fixing that whole mess. There's no way. That would take forever and I would never finish this thing. So this, however, I think I can fix, and I think I should fix. There's also a tiny little blip back here right there that I think also needs some addressing. And look, there's that fun little band again. Yeah, just the amount of detail that it runs through. Like, I don't have it in me to fix that. Sorry. So in the interest of trying to be as light as possible, I'm going to try using a sanding stick. I would prefer generally to use a sponge for this, but that's a very narrow area. So can't even really tell if there's something in there or if it's just like a weird surface thing. want to sand down here, not up there. Obviously, we're going to have to come back in there and clean that up and repaint it. Joy. So let me do that, and then we'll pick back up with the rest of the paint job. And the flurm is gone. So once that sets, I will come back and touch up the colors and get it back up to snuff with kind of the rest of the TIE cockpit ball, and we'll keep on rolling. Kind of like what I did on the rest of the cockpit ball and the wings and whatnot. I'm going to use some dark gray and other colors to just kind of dingy up those touched up areas so they match a little bit more with the rest of the paint. And I've got the Mac valve turned on this thing, so if it sounds weird, that's why. So there's the dark gray. Go with some dark gunship gray. This is again a very warm, dirty gray. Great for weathering purposes. It's kind of like the Starship filth of MRP paints. So there it is, nice and dirtied up again. We're going to swap back to the main color mix and just do a very quick unifying spray. Okay, that got me to where I wanted it to be. Nice. So with that little fix that shit side quest and subsequent touch-up work, I'm ready to call the TIE Interceptor's overall gray scheme done. And I'm going to use that as a stopping point to sign off on episode 2. When we pick back up in episode 3, there's going to be a bit of masking to isolate and paint things like these little side doohickeys that seem to connect up to the canopy frame. Make sure they're a darker gray. You know, various other little elements on the Interceptor that need a bit of masking to color separate them, like maybe around the ion engines. We'll see. And from there, yeah, it's going to start moving into things like getting the canopy frame a bit weathered up before I start putting acetate in the back of it to simulate the glass. Probably knocking out the weathering on the inside of the cockpit ball itself. And starting to think about moving into weathering overall across the surface, which is going to be interesting. Because I'm not sure right now if I want to go with a oil and enamel type of thing, or if I want to go with an aqua gloss wash of like rubber black to get some cool shade relief detail and whatnot going on in all this glorious, glorious surface texture. I'm honestly a bit undecided on that at the moment, but we'll see where we go, and then weathering and all that good stuff. So thanks for watching. I hope you're having fun watching this 1/48 scale TIE Interceptor kind of come to life after it's been 3D printed. I'll be back soon with episode 3. Keep watching, and as always, if you want to get early access to the videos before they show up on YouTube, and just get a general sense of what all I'm working on, some behind the scenes stuff, some glimpses into future builds, various ramblings and thoughts and things that are stressing me out, and all that kind of stuff, feel free to sign on to my Patreon page at patreon.com/DugsModels. Really appreciate it. It goes a long way towards helping to support all the video work that I've been doing and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, if you don't want to sign up, that's fine too. So anyway, I hope that you found this episode interesting, and if not interesting, at least entertaining. And keep an eye out for episode 3, which will probably be landing sometime in the nearest future. Until then, thanks, and later.